I actually liken it less as bots, computerized bots, as computerized troll farms.
Yeah, viruses, mental
Yeah,
viruses.
yeah.
So they use okay, so now, okay, we've got the military part, or trying to undermine different countries. But you know how in the US they're now driving transgenderism, child free, and all this other insane, suicidal, liberal crap. How much of that is the government creating the same? Because it looks like the same thing in its own ways. Is that really people behind it, or is it bots again? It's just the same types of systems.
It it's the same system, exactly the same system. Like I say, it was funded by all the major intelligence agencies, the Pentagon, so it's everything. It's a way to control the people. And, you know, it's using much of the same techniques that have always been used. You have 100 people, protesting for this uh, alternative lifestyle, as they call it. And, with the camera shots, the video shots, they make it look like hundreds of thousands of people out there when it really isn't. And these computer systems can adjust things, modify things, put text behind them, and say, this is what's going on. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of Westerners, at least, are losing their critical thinking skills. So they look at it and they don't think, something's wrong here. We're hearing more and more of it now, but
You know, I'll call you Snowden number 2.0 because Snowden 1.0 came in and said that, how much people are being monitored. And what was shocking was how many people in America, after being told you're being monitored and controlled by the government, your freedoms are an illusion, blah, 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 they called him a traitor.
yeah. And, you know, he was telling the truth.
He was.
And this is what the government does to people who tell the truth.
Yes.
Another example, Scott Ritter talks the truth and they pretty much ruined his life.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
Scott's a fighter. They went after him different ways, but a lot of what happened to him was all setups as well from the government.
Hmm. You know, we listened to Ritter. We listened to um, McGregor and Black and a lot of these colonels and a lot of other people. But you got to wonder how many of them are going to be either dead or refugees, political refugees, say in Crimea,
Yeah.
within the next 2 years. Because everyone's, oh, Trump's going to come election. First of all, the elections that were stolen in 2020, what's changed? Everything's still the same. Nothing's been amended. No systems have been changed. Right in mail-in ballots. I don't see, the Democrats just walking away from ultimate power.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways you can tell that Trump will be no different is this current election cycle. He started out with, I will end the war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. Then uh, Israel and Gaza came along, and he was going to end that too. Now, all of a sudden, he's very pro-Israel, and we need to go in there and, fight and support them and get rid of these evil Palestinians. And, again, it's a lot of propaganda wrapped around it. People start thinking in terms of Russians are bad, as in Russian people. Palestinian people are bad. They're all terrorists. And that isn't the case. Hamas, they have their reasons for doing what they do. Israel has their reasons, but they're governments. Russia in Ukraine and NATO fighting in Ukraine is the governments. It's not the people. This was a disagreement I had with Scott Ritter on his own show once was he said there are no good Ukrainians because anybody who is good, would go out and, fight against their government. And it's like, Scott, if something like this happened in the United States, would you put your wife and daughter out on the front line? Well, no. I said, so there's no good Americans either. Well. So, these are the things is everybody gets their perceptions a little skewed on things.
Right, right. Um, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I enjoyed I lived in the US for a long time, obviously. I always enjoyed hearing people like, oh, if they ever come for our guns and all this, we'll stand and fight. No, you won't. The vast majority will surrender your guns. Because
Yep.
when that 4 meter tall uh, uh, 4 meter tall SWAT truck, the Mech Pro comes rolling down that can actually go right through your wooden box house, you'll surrender your guns. The vast majority will surrender their guns. The vast
Yep.
majority will do what they're told once the
If
government arrives in force.
if at that point they actually have any guns left. Because
Right.
again, you get the NRA in there trying to be very pro gun, but you have all these lobbies who, all of these shootings are not just kids going nuts and going in and shooting places. A lot of it is built up, planned through the government. Not all of them. I will not ever claim that. Some stuff does happen that isn't good, but a lot of these things are meant specifically to be able to tighten the gun control laws and drive people's perceptions to guns are bad, we should turn them in.
So wait a second. So let's clarify what you just said. At least some of the mass shootings in the US, which are happening weekly these days, at least some of those
Yes,
mass shootings are organized and driven by some parts of the US government,
yes,
knowing that they're going to be mass shootings, dead women, dead children, their own citizens. For political ends, they're driving mass murder.
yes. Some of them.
Some of them, right? Some of them. There's another issue with a lot of it too is, and even Michael Moore, who's as liberal as it gets, had to admit that a lot of those shootings were also linked to antidepressants and the fact that
Yeah,
the scripts are just given out left and right like candy to teenagers, and nobody's monitoring them
sure.
afterwards. But that's also creating the same grounds for it.
Yeah. And the fact that this is part of that liberal thought process again is people with mental health issues. Well, give them a pill, let them out loose on the street, and they're fine, knowing that they aren't.
And by the way, if you look at any of the manifestos of the vast majority of those shooters, they're not Christian God-fearing, I'll go to church people. They're the
Right.
purple-haired psycho, my life is ruined, I'm going to ruin your life, and so on and so on. We don't exist. We're just meat puppets, and yeah, I can kill whomever I want to. The manifestos are
Right.
extremely liberal.
So on things like mass shootings, let's bring it home. Moscow in March. It this warning from the US Embassy, it was put out unofficially. It did not go through official channels that they had any information. And it was on the week that, originally when Shaman was supposed to perform. But security was too high, too many high profile people there. So these guys put it off for a few weeks. There was no new warning issued. The US government did not go through official channels to notify Russia. And immediately after it happened, before even the guys were caught and any investigations were done, the United States is announcing it wasn't Ukraine.
And
And
I'll tell you,
then,
yeah,
yeah, then with them going towards Ukraine, then it was ISIS K. Well, ISIS K was a CIA funded group used for their purposes. And, all the information that I have from my sources is they were reactivated for this again. So even though it appears that it came from our friends next door. And, there's a very, very high likelihood that it had US government funding behind it.
I believe absolutely. ISIS to
Yeah.
begin with, it's a legal organization, is I don't know if it's a full creation of the U.S. And its allies, but it is a tool of the U.S. and its allies. It appeared in
Yeah.
Libya when it was needed, appeared in Afghanistan when it was needed, never launched a single attack on American forces for the well, very rare attacks on American forces.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of Iraqi eyewitnesses that said American planes were dropping equipment and supplies to ISIS over and over. Never launched a single attack against Israel. In fact, there's videos of Israel allowing wounded ISIS troops across their border for medical care.
Hmm.
Damn, those cameras. They're everywhere.
And what do we have going on in Turkey? A NATO ally, yet they're supporting the Kurds.
Yeah.
So same difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Which is, and the Kurds there are hitting both Syria and Turkey while we're at it. And the Kurds are
Right.
really an odd group because in northern Iraq, at least half the Kurds are on Turkey's side. Half the
Yeah.
Kurds are, I don't know whose side, because they're definitely not on the Arab side. And Mosul, which is now a Kurdish town after the U.S. massacred the population there by freeing it from IGIL by leveling it and driving through putting a flag. So yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah. And who's really been providing most of the security for Israel by keeping a lot of these organizations kind of under control, should we say? But Russia. This
Yeah,
is the forces that have been on the border between Lebanon and Israel. And, but what we started seeing in the news over the last month or so is that Russia is sending forces to the border with Israel. They sent back in a police unit that they had pulled out a couple of months before simply because there was more activity going on. But it's that propaganda factor again. It's real easy to then take it and throw it out there to people. And with them closing off Russian media or any media that's friendly to Russia to their people, it then draws that perception. The Department of Defense dictionary defines perception management. That's what they call propaganda.
perception management. Well, it is. I mean, it is perception management. Propaganda is very much
Yeah.
perception. It's more than that. So you would say that what percent of the American population is under basic government control, whether they know it or not?
It's got to be 90%.
Ooh. Wow. Wow.
Maybe 85. The ones who aren't are the ones who are trying to immigrate here. So, you know, if they want to come to Crimea, we help them immigrate here, my wife and I. She teaches Russian to English speakers and English to Russian speakers. Uh, we help them with the immigration process, the, the whole deal, getting their money over here.
Yeah, it's a big one. That's an issue that we need to talk about. We're running out of time. I want to thank Kevin for joining.